So good morning, everyone. Thanks for, good morning. Thanks for coming for day two. I'm not sure how many people had a long night's sleep, as she said, but regardless, thanks for having you today. And really happy to kick off the day with George.
Great to be here.
And George has been, as Amanda said, in Salesforce from the very early days. So George, why don't you kind of give a quick background about yourself and we'll kick it off.
Sure. First of all, it's great to be here. This brings back great memories for me. This was where Salesforce had its very first Dreamforce event. Salesforce's original Customer Success Summit, if you want to use that term. And so it's just wonderful memories for me. I've been at Salesforce since 2001. I actually started as an intern there. And I had a folding table by a concrete pillar back when the company was a little more humble in size. Over the last 12, 13 years, I've really done a ton of different functions in the company, and most recently, the Chief Operating Officer of the company. So it's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah, and so this audience is about customer success, and we all have the saying that if we don't know what to do, we should do what Salesforce has done and something on our SaaS business. So why don't you share with us a little bit about the origins of customer success in Salesforce? How did it all start?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Customer success at Salesforce, like many of the good things that happen at Salesforce, largely I think was a product of necessity. And one of the interesting things when you're in a cloud, or at the time we called it a SaaS business model, is the subscription business model really forces on you certain realities. And when Salesforce started, it was a very simple idea. It was $50 user a month in terms of the pricing, and it was all month-to-month contracts. So there was no annual contracts. So back then, targeting a small business base, what Salesforce had was very significant customer attrition. And it didn't take very long in the business to see that. And so really that necessity, that business model necessity forced a really deep consideration and thinking around the whole customer success model for the company. And really that necessity really bore out a whole set of innovations that I think have become really standard for the industry at this point. Things like customer success managers and other types of things that I'm sure we'll get into in the conversation.
Yeah, and what was the thesis, right? So churn was the problem. What was the thesis that kind of built the organizational structure, responsibilities? How did you start? What were the initial assumptions, if you will?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a story. So, kind of the genesis of this, in terms of my involvement in it, was early in my career, we did an executive offsite. And so it was pretty early in my career. I was relatively, I think, junior in the organization. And for some reason, I got called to this executive offsite somewhere in Napa Valley. And Mark put me on the agenda. And he said, and I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he handed me the agenda, and it said, what I know that you don't know about the business. And I was like, what does that mean? He's like, whatever you want it to mean. And so I was a friend of all these executives in the company, and I thought about what I was going to talk about. And one thing that in my tool set that I brought from my kind of previous work was I'm a pretty analytical person. And so I knew that we had been talking about churn a little bit, but no, we hadn't really put an analytical, kind of a deep analytical lens on it. And I thought, well, we have amazing customer data. I mean, that's what we do. We're a CRM company. We have all this great customer data. And so, in terms of the tenets, one of the things that the way I viewed it, and I think still lives on to this day at Salesforce, it really starts with 2 poles. One is actually talking to your customer and understanding your customer from a qualitative perspective, but also the other is really bringing a deeply analytical view to it. And so for that presentation, what I did is I really broke down what was happening in our business from an analytical point of view, the touch points where customers were falling out of the cycle, and I kind of put a diagram on there and showed how we could reinvent that whole life cycle. And I gave it a label. I called it the Salesforce adoption machine. And that was kind of a language we used for a few years. In fact, Salesforce today still has a role called the Chief Adoption Officer. It was when we first started using that term adoption as a term that kind of went hand in hand with success. And so we took those analytical insights to kind of redesign a process. We built deep analytical tools to kind of institutionalize that knowledge, we built something called an early warning system, an EWS, which allows Salesforce to this day to forecast, whether a customer will attrit or not, or have attrition or not in the next 12 months with a very, very high degree of accuracy. And then we paired that up with another poll, which is what I talked about, the kind of the qualitative, the customer view. Because at the end of the day, you can't just have an analytical view, you have to also have an on-the-ground view and a relationship with the customer. And so we made a huge bet at the time. And we reorganized our entire go-to-market team. At the time, we had people that were quota-carrying that sold to new logos, and people that were quota-carrying that sold to existing customers. And we revamped that whole resource pool. We took all the people that were the hunters, and we said, okay, now you're going to do all the quota-carrying business for the company. And we took the people that were the post-sale or initial kind of farmers, if you will, and we said, you're not going to basically have any quota anymore. And we took away their quota. We said, you're just going to be responsible for the success of the customer. That through our early warning system, we know basically when customers are in trouble, and we think that we can create a significant ROI by having you go in and work with the customer on adoption. We know the 3 to 4 to 5 key things that the customer has to do to really lower that attrition rate. For example, we knew that if they used our workflow automation capability, that dramatically lowered the churn rate of the customer or the expected churn of the customer. And we said, go focus on those things. And that was really the genesis of it. It was probably around the 2002, 2003 timeframe, very early. And those core principles still live in Salesforce to this day. Obviously, the teams that have gone on to run those and scale those over time have made them much more sophisticated. But at the end of the day, the heart of it is still very much the same. It's really deep data, deep analytical insight, asking good questions, and then pairing that with people on the ground that really have deep relationships with the customers.
So I want to drill down a little bit more on the churn analysis that you've done, right?
Sure. I have the formula in my pocket.
Yeah, so, no, because there was a few sessions yesterday, the breakout rooms where people were sitting on the floor. So I realized that people are really kind of trying to understand the metrics behind that. So what was your, I would say, thinking? How did you design this churn analysis, right? What were you trying to prove or disprove in the model that you've built?
Well, I think one of the most fundamental things that I realized, and this is a ways back, so I'm going to tap into my memory banks a little bit, but one of the things I really realized was that the organization didn't even really have good definitions of both churn and adoption. And those are kind of like flip sides of each other. On the churn side, when we were talking about attrition, we had a lot of things. There's a lot of different types of attrition. There's like customer attrition, there's user attrition, there's dollar attrition, there's partial attrition, complete attrition. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. So if a customer is spending, $100,000 a year with you, and then they go down to $90,000, is that attrition? If they, how do you compare that to a customer that goes to zero and leaves or comes back? So one of the most basic things we do is just put together a set of definitions around how we thought about attrition, what our attrition rate really meant. And so getting some grounding for some organizational consistency was important. And by the way, I don't think there's only one right way to do it. I just think it's important to have language that everyone agrees on, then you build systems around that and it kind of starts to get ingrained in your culture. And then on the adoption side too, we had to figure out what adoption meant. Is adoption a user logging in every day, every week, every month? Is it them actually taking some activity in the system? Is it them using particular features? We came up with a set of definitions that we basically put into our early warning system and became kind of the de facto language of the company. Everyone kind of knew when we said something like true login rate, everyone understood what that meant. And that was, it's part of ingraining, language is just really important to ingraining things into your culture and then just running reports and metrics right out of Salesforce for that. So I think that's just very basic stuff.
So that's really amazing. I think a lot of the folks in the audience today are kind of at these stages of their businesses trying to figure things out. But I guess if we had this time machine, fast forward, what were the learnings? So this was the initial thesis. You put the customer success organization to focus on existing customers. You've built the early warning system. What have you learned that you haven't anticipated in the beginning? What is the maturity curve, if you will, of the customer success organization in Salesforce?
Well, I think that one of the things, I think that the building blocks, as I said, are fundamentally the same, actually. But what you do get better at is you do get much more sophisticated in your analysis. And as an example, you know, one of the things that we quickly determined, what we did was we bucketed our customers into different adoption levels. So we looked at customers that were aggressively using all the key features, you know, that we knew were, you know, associated with lower churn, and then we had like four quadrants, A, B, C, D. And then the customers that were basically at the top quadrant, right, using every feature we knew, you know, deeply ingrained, had customized it, had integrated it, even they actually, you know, there's a churn rate associated with them. And, you know, I personally, and you know, many in the company started thinking of that as kind of like the natural churn rate. That's like the churn rate that if you do everything perfectly, you're still going to get some churn. But that became the target, right? Because that tells you, okay, that's what's theoretically possible. And then what you do is you basically start to break down the people in the other buckets. You take people in all the buckets, and then you start breaking them down by reason code, which is a pretty standard thing. And then what we did was we soon had a pretty full picture of exactly why, you know, each cohort of when they came on board, size of company, we had different codes that we used, and we would look at that on a regular basis. And then what we just did is systematically said, okay, these are the stack rank of the codes in terms of reasons people are leaving. Which ones can we affect, which ones we can't. So certain things are just more difficult to, like if there's economic downturn or things like that, those are a little bit out of your control. But the ones we could affect, we prioritized those, we put people against them. And then we started segmenting ones that we thought were things we could tackle through automated programs, automated systems. And ones that we would have to put people to. And obviously you can segment your customers, so the higher value customers, you put people on those, the customers that aren't spending a lot, you have to do automated programs. But just getting much more sophisticated about all of that over time, and then building a staff and a team who, with the skill set to basically be able to parse that analysis on a regular basis was something that was really critical, because finding those people, I'm sure many of the audience in this audience fall into that bucket, people that have the analytical tool set to basically parse what can be a very confusing set of data and make sense of it, and then guide the rest of the organization is really critical.
So what did you learn about the team, I would say, skills that are required? So we understand that kind of building the program and the metrics and the analysis requires a certain level of analytical capabilities.
Sure.
But the people that are actually using the early warning system, the account managers, if you will, or you guys have coined the term customer success managers, right? Mm-hmm. So what are customer success managers in Salesforce? What do they do? What are they like? Are they kind of more account relationship people, product people, training? What are they?
Well, I think that, you know, we view a customer success manager as the quarterback of the success of the account. And therefore, you have to be, you know, more of an athlete than a specialist, I would say. But if you're an athlete with a kind of a specialty within the broad skill set, to me, it's a lot of it is about relationships, because it's very hard to find one person that's going to be the expert on the product, be able to handle the customer relationship, be able to do the data analysis. I mean, I think it's very hard to find. Maybe there's a couple of unicorns out there that can do it all. But when you're trying to hire at scale, you can't. It's very hard to find those number of people at scale. So if you had to concentrate on one thing, we try and concentrate on people that are great at effectively account management, managing that relationship, because those are people that with the skill set to navigate the customer and just bring in the right people, you know, which is what a great quarterback does, is bring in the right people, the right resources to make it happen. On the back end side, in terms of the analytical side, you know, what we look for are those people where you have generally fewer people and you can scale them more. That's where you do want to look for the unicorns. And the unicorns, to me, are the people that can do the data analysis piece, but also have the business judgment to ask the right questions. Because you got a lot of people that have great questions, great insights, they're deep business experience, just can't do the heavy-duty analytical crunching basically takes to make this work, and vice versa. And if you can find that combination in a couple people or one or two people, it can make a huge difference in the trajectory of your organization. You know, one or two people really, for Salesforce actually, were the people that kind of cracked the core algorithm of the EWS, for example. It wasn't me. And those people had a huge impact on the financial outcome and performance of the company.
All right. So kind of switching gears a little bit, kind of a broader view of the market,
sure.
The software market. So one question that I keep having, and I mentioned this in the keynote yesterday, is that all of a sudden there's a very big conversation around customer success. right? And it's 2015, and you guys
It's right there behind me.
Exactly. So the question is, why do you think it took the industry so long to discover this very known secret called customer success? Why 2015? Why 2014? Why not 2010? Right? SaaS companies started way before 2010. It's not like it only started in 2010.
Well, I think you look at the disruptive innovations in our industry. So when Salesforce started, right, the disruptive innovation was the cloud. And what the cloud did was, it really took these systems of record that were effectively deployed on premise and moved them into the cloud, made them easier to deploy, faster, cheaper, lower risk, et cetera. But if you actually looked at the product and what it did, it wasn't that dissimilar to maybe the old, if you looked at Salesforce and Siebel, side by side, and you didn't look under the hood about, the deployment model, okay, one has an accounts tab, one has an accounts tab. These are basically systems of record for storing, customer, history of customer interactions and engagement. When you think of what happened, maybe a decade later, Salesforce added to it systems of engagement that we saw from what was happening in the consumer world, things like Facebook, these kind of messaging-oriented paradigms, and out came Salesforce Chatter and other types of technologies that are out there in the market. What's happening today, and kind of the reason that there's another shift happening in the market, is that the future of software is that it has to fundamentally get more intelligent. That people aren't just going to want essentially a dumb database out there that you put in stuff, you pull it back out, and maybe the engagement layer makes it a little bit easier to put stuff in and pull it out. What people want is they want the software itself to be intelligent, to tell people what to do data, to have the data science built into the software so that it's guiding each employee on the ground to be as optimally positioned as possible, because not everyone in their individual capability is a data scientist and is going to pull the data out themselves. So you want to build it into the software. And if you look at what Salesforce has done, it's made a couple acquisitions of companies that I think are interesting in this space, like RelateIQ. There's partners coming up in the ecosystem. There's companies like your own, which are, I think, kind of doing what Salesforce started doing. Really trying to usher in this new wave of really this intelligent software, intelligent systems, and I think that's going to be the future of our industry.
Smart software.
That's one way of saying it. Sure.
All right. And kind of the focus.
If that's on your website, then that's what I'm going to say. So.
Yeah, it's new. I didn't remember that.
Okay, fantastic.
By the way, guys, if you have questions, we're opening up those mics in 2 minutes. So if you have questions to George, so feel free to stand behind those mics in 2 minutes, and we'll get some questions from the audience. But customer success, again, in the sense of, why do you think is the focus today on customer success? What it is so obvious, right? Salesforce was very subscription business. Retention is a big part of your business. So you guys, 2003, 2004, realized that you need customer success organization to focus on retaining and growing your customer base. Why did the rest of the industry, why did it took it another 10 years to figure it out?
Well, I think part of it is just that, there's more data than ever out there that's possible, and it's not, it used to be that CRM was fundamentally something that was used to empower, mostly a B2B type of phenomena, used to empower employees on the front lines, whether you're salespeople or service people, maybe used to do some marketing campaigns. But now, there's a whole proliferation of data being captured, being built right into sensors, being built right into products. I mean, there's more data than ever before. Maybe some of you have seen Mark out there and Michael Dell and the whole, celebrity Fitbit challenge. I mean, there's just a proliferation today of interesting products and services that are really capturing more data than ever. And with that data, really becomes the opportunity to leverage that to create highly personalized, highly customized experiences that really raise the bar for all of us, And if we don't figure it out for our business, whether we're in the software industry, financial services, manufacturing, whatever product or service we're in, companies that don't basically figure that out are going to be left behind. And I'll give you an example, right? So you think about this Fitbit challenge, right? Now, Fitbit is a technology company, it's a tech startup, everyone thinks they're going to be in the forefront of this stuff. But think about the implications of that for other businesses. So think about, for example, the fitness industry, the gym. My wife goes to 24-hour fitness. She likes it. But it's not hard to imagine a future where if in a couple years, if your gym is not leveraging that data from these devices to create highly personalized experiences, you're going to be left behind. And so I think all of us feel that, that pressure. We see that happening. We know it's going to happen sooner rather than later. And I think that data and then basically the ability to create intelligent software that supports that and processes that and builds the data science right into the software, I think that confluence or that convergence is why there's this energy in this room and in our industry right now. It's why it's so exciting for all of us.
Yeah, it is really, really exciting. So basically, if I summarize what you just said, is that we cannot just focus right now on replicating past experiences. There's a market pressure to innovate into new experiences because we can and because some of the early companies can actually demonstrate that they can. So these are becoming the expected experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I think every industry can evolve. If you look at what Google Nest has done, and now now Honeywell and other companies have kind of follow suit, which is they took products that they describe as unloved products, so effectively boring products that we most of us don't think about, and they've figured out a way to transform those with the power of, yes, great design, but also great intelligence and data powering a new type of user experience. I mean, that's the future. And I could go on and on to every Salesforce customer, every industry that they're in, and tell you a story of how it's transforming that industry. I think there's never been a more exciting time, and I think that it's a time of great creativity, a time of great innovation, and innovation is not just trapped here in Silicon Valley startups. It really, that innovation can be brought to and leveraged by every company in both the new and the old economy, and I think that's what makes it fun for all of us.
Yeah, this is why we're so excited to be here. Any questions from the audience? We have 3 minutes before anyone. Yeah, I see there one question. Just say your name and your question, please. Yeah, working.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Michael from Montreal. I would like to know, how do you see customer success in a company like scenario where there's very few customers? So let's say maybe 10 customers, but they are very large, and the customers are part of very large project, e-commerce project, so the product is the base of those projects. How do you see customer success around this kind of scenario?
Well, I think beyond the obvious, which is, if you have your eggs in a few baskets, you better watch the baskets pretty carefully. And that means strong relationship management, strong account management. I think that, the interesting thing that I would say, that what we found at Salesforce, is that, at the end of the day, even if it's 10 companies, those 10 companies typically are comprised of many, many, many people. And the question isn't so much, do you have one relationship manager that understands the account, right? I mean, I think it's very hard actually for one person to fully understand an account. It's how are all of your people, on your side of the fence, if you will, collaborating and engaging with the people on the other side of the fence, right? And how do you actually make that more systematic, right, and more fluid than trying to rely on the old model of, okay, there's just one person that theoretically can just understand how all of GE works, for example, which is almost impossible, right? And so, at Salesforce, what we do is we actually we use technology to break down the walls between our employees and our customers' employees, and we have shared collaboration zones where basically people can engage as if they're part of the same company. And I think the more you can do that, the better. In a lot of those types of industries, I'll tell you a story. So, one of Salesforce's great customers is Qualcomm. And they have a lot of tight relationships where they're trying to work with their partners to get products to market quickly, right? If they miss a cycle, for example, in delivering a chip or pairing it with a particular piece of a particular device, that can be hugely impactful to them. And so, we partner with them on things not just their CRM, but also things around the collaboration area so that they can basically get to market faster. And a lot of that's just really about breaking down the walls of employee-to-employee collaboration. Now, is there data science behind that? Yes, but a lot of it actually is the human side. And using these, kind of what I was talking about, systems of engagement to really break down the walls between them. So if you're still relying on just one account manager to try and manage the entire account, and you're not actually directly connecting the right employees on your side of the fence, the right employees on that side of the fence, I would say you're missing a trick.
Thank you very much.
Over there.
Hi, Natalie with the Resumator. You've obviously seen quite a tremendous amount of organizational change, and I assume have been part of the hiring process for a great number of people. What's an interview question that you think really judges by character how adaptable someone is, because they're going to have to deal with an enormous amount of change?
That's a good one.
Well, I think that, so I was just talking to a guy backstage, and he was saying to me that one of my former managers at Salesforce, or someone I work for at Salesforce, Teen Zwo, he's the CEO of Zora, was here yesterday. And when I worked for him, he used to say to me, and this is not a direct answer to your question, but I'll get to it in a second while I stall for time, is he used to say to me, the most important, and I found this to be true, he said the most important question you can ever ask in any interview, and this is my number one piece of interview advice, is why. And so anytime anyone ever explains any part of their resume, their story, I will always ask them why. I went to school at such and such a college, okay, why? I took this major, why? And if you ask that question enough times, I think you usually can unpack someone pretty well. In terms of your adaptability question, the specific thing I do is I do a lot of role play in interviews. Okay, so whatever position I'm interviewing someone for, I'll always throw a lot of hypotheticals at them, and I will actually role play a lot. So for example, if I'm hiring someone for a marketing position, I will usually say, okay, here's a product, or maybe it's a product that we both know, but they haven't worked on directly, something we're familiar with in the real world. And I'll say, okay, now you have to go market this product. Tell me how you position it on the reporter. Let's role play the conversation. Tell me how you're going to pitch it. Tell me what the press release says. You shift people out of their comfort zone a little bit, and you actually can see how they do in it. And you can see if people think on their feet and how they react to that. But that'd be what I specifically do. I don't know if that's the best way to do it or not.
Thank you.
All right, so we're out of time. George, thanks very much.
All right, thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed that.
All right, good luck to you all.